Hi there, welcome into the Broncos Europe podcast. We're on episode number 2. Here we've got a very special guest joining us today. But first, I'm going to introduce my co-host once again. I'm joined by Mr. Kieron Morley. How are you doing today, Kieron?
Yeah, not so bad, Mark. Thank you. Again, looking forward to this one more than last week because we're that little bit closer to football. So, yeah, I'm in a good mood today.
Yeah, and like I said, we're joined by a very special guest. We're joined by co-founder of Let's Talk Broncos. He's the king of training camp threads. It's kept me up to date this off season and in the knowledge of all that Broncos information. So, welcome to the show, Zach.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Love that we have got some Broncos fans across the pond, and really excited to talk ball with y'all. It's an absolute treat to be here.
I don't know if you made it over to the London game. We'll just touch on this quickly, but you said that it's nice that we've got fans over the pond. Broncos country showed out when we played at Wembley. Did you make it over?
I didn't. It's on my bucket list though. I think the next time the Broncos are out there, I absolutely have to do it. Colum, I don't know if you guys know Colum at all, but
Yeah.
he was getting on me like, you got to come out here, and I just wasn't able to do it last time with my schedule. But if I get the opportunity again, I am definitely there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the whole weekend, we went down for the whole weekend, and it was just such a great atmosphere. Broncos were making the noise in the stadium, and we just about scraped through and got the win there. So, great time to have. We'd love to see you over here at some point. So we'll go straight into segment 1. What we've done is we've picked our Broncos schedule. We picked it game by game. I asked the guys before to send me through their picks. So I've done it in one big graphic, and we'll talk through our predictions. So, first week, Kieron, run us through your sort of openings.
Doesn't look great, does it, when we're sat here picking a win and then the media guy from across the pond's gone the opposite way? But hopefully that's just the one-off on this little segment. But I think we talked about this, Mark. I think for me, flip a coin on this one. Interesting to hear Zach's thoughts as we get into a little bit. But new head coach at the Seahawks. Defensive was previously defensive coordinator, so maybe some of the failings that they had the back end of last year might be getting put right, but I'm hoping that it's maybe just a little bit too early. It's going to be a bit hostile down there for Bourne and the guys, but I'm hoping that I've probably just done it hard overhead on this one. I want us to see us start the season with a win, but flip of a coin, it could have gone either way for me.
Yeah, I mean, the opening, I always think we need to get off to that because we've got a rookie quarterback in. We need that good start. We've got a tough middle section there where things could sort of go off the rails a little bit, but Zach, talk us through sort of your feelings, how Broncos country is sort of preparing, how we stacked for the opening part of the season.
I think it's just a brutal start, unfortunately for the Broncos. You're throwing all of their first 5 games. If you told me those defenses end up in the top 10, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. I think the only one with maybe like shaky shot of getting there is probably the Buccaneers, and they have Todd Bowles, who gives young quarterbacks fits very often. The Jalen Hurts famously melted down in the playoffs a time or two against that Todd Bowles defense, so he knows how to cook it up. For me, picking this one just came down to that. If I were to draw up like what is the last situation I want my rookie quarterback going into, it would probably be Seattle. And then for the coach, the most complicated defensive play caller in the league. And I think those are the boxes Seattle checks. I do think the rookie coach point is a very valid one. He is probably going to take some time to warm up, to find his footing. But for the defense to pick up his scheme. But I still think it's going to be enough in this week 1 game. If it doesn't go that way, I'd say it's probably because the Broncos run game really shows up. And that Seahawks offensive line is a little shaky. I really like the Broncos pass rush. Even if they don't have that ace, I think they've got a lot of bodies that can get after the quarterback. And so I could see that maybe their pass rush, their ability to ground and pound as well, shorten this game, kind of favor them.
Yeah, you just spoke about it then. The Broncos pass rush is it's a difficult thing to analyze, really. There's no star piece, like you said, but there are 4 more than capable guys there who should contribute quite often. Baron Browning is just that ace card that we have, and you never know quite what you're going to get. We don't know how much he's improved from last season, but I'm hoping he can push up there to double-digit sacks. That's my personal aim for him. Steelers game, second week. Is it the perfect game? Russ has been named the starter over there, coming back against Denver, where I think he will think he's been wronged there. I'm guessing he thinks he should have stayed as quarterback. But obviously, a lot of Broncos country are thrilled he's moved on. But of course, we took that huge chunk of salary cap impact there to remove him and go with Bo Nix. But obviously, Kieran, talk us through that one a little bit.
You've nailed it there, though, Matt. I think if we're, as an organisation, you're willing to eat that salary, that shows that. And we talked about this last week, that he wasn't Sean's quarterback. That's the be all and end all. So yeah, he might feel like he's been wrong, but 2 years it wasn't good enough. And I just think this one's going to be an intense one for that reason. I think it's going to be fiery. I think Russ and the Steelers camp, they'll be ready to go, but equally, I think we'll feel like we've got a point to prove against them. So yeah, I'm not, I think Steelers out the 5. Zach, interesting to hear your thoughts. And again, out the, they're saying the first 5 games, the D's that might end up in the top 10. But does the Steelers rank top out of them for you? Because for me, I think they're probably one that we can get after a little bit in this game, and hopefully, Bo settles in a little bit, and we can, maybe see that run game like you've mentioned again. But maybe this is one where we see a little bit of the Bo that we're expecting in the coming years.
I definitely hope so. I think Pittsburgh's tough too, though. I think that front, you got Keanu Benton, you got TJ Watt, you got Highsmith. Herbig is coming off a really great preseason for them on the defensive side as well. I don't think they're going to be as difficult to decipher. I don't think they're going to be throwing as many curveballs Nix's way, but I think the talent is really strong. I think they've been a perennial kind of top 10-ish defense for that reason. I will say, though, I agree with both of you that I think the Sean Payton, Russell Wilson aspect of this really does matter. Not only the rivalry and like the score settling, which again, like Sean Payton is a man who wants to settle a score. So I think definitely the extra motivation is there. I think they're going to be obsessive about trying to win this game. But even beyond that, I think it favors the Broncos because, I mean, twofold. One, they've seen what I guess it's really just the same point in two different ways of looking at it. But ultimately, they've seen what Russell Wilson does well with and what he really struggles with. Either Vance Joseph going up against it in practice or being able to study what other defenses did to him. And then Sean Payton having to design an offense around that guy. The narrative after the season that, did Sean Payton adjust his offense enough? I always thought was so crazy because you look at that offense, it's a Russell Wilson offense. They are top 5 in actually not even top 5. They're first in throws behind the line of scrimmage. They are top 5, if not first, in throws 20 plus yards downfield. And then there is nothing in the middle of the field. There's nothing between the hashes. It was a Russell Wilson offense. And I think the reason we saw the Broncos fold so much down the stretch was that Russell Wilson offense is so limited. Once you got 10 games into the season and defenses knew, okay, they can't do quick game because Russ can't do that. They can't attack the middle of the field because Russ can't do that. They can't attack the intermediate part of the field because Russ can't do that. So really, let's defend the run game. Let's watch for screens and let's make sure they don't burn us over the top. And if you do those 3 things, Russ was pretty inept. I think the Broncos know that better than anyone, and I expect them to really just light Russell Wilson up. I think, honestly, if Russell Wilson's week 1 debut is so bad that he were to get benched before week 2, I would probably change my pick.
Yeah, I mean, that game is going to be so key to our season. I think it's the ones the fans are going to want to win. Russ coming back to the city. What was frustrating watching him was he'd have the clean pocket and then he'd be running around and he wouldn't know where to go and he'd take so long throwing it. That is the total opposite of Bo Nix. Bo Nix gets that ball out really, really quick. It's what I've enjoyed watching in preseason. Just that change of pace. Like, he keeps us moving the chains. He's on schedule. That is what Sean Payton wants in this offense. He doesn't want to do anything special. He just wants us to stick on schedule from my point of view there. Now, through 3 weeks of the season, myself and Kieran have got us 3-0. I think we must be optimistic there over the pond most are in Denver and probably the US. But I want to talk about the little 2-game run that we face AFC West for the first time. We've got the Raiders and the Chargers both at home. Do we snap that streak to the Raiders? That streak is more to me than the Chiefs one was. It frustrates me every time I look at it, and I don't know how they've managed to do it.
You've got to look at it, Mark. I mean, it's we get beat off the Chiefs. We've been getting beat off the Chiefs, but back-to-back Super Bowls and possibly one of the favourites still to go and get it again this year. The Raiders have been poor, and that's the bit that hurts. We're not. We feel like we should be a better team than that. We haven't been, obviously, but throughout the course of the season to be losing twice, it's just it's a kick. So I like that we've all think that's going to change in week 5. I think obviously there's a bit of uncertainty in there. I think the Raiders probably have regressed a little bit as well. They've still got some big players. I think the likes of Max Crosby coming after to Bo and Co. We're going to have to be on point. But for me, this home game is one where we finally put a stop to the rot. So.
Yeah, like you said, Max Crosby is going to be sort of the key one there. He scares me every time we play them. He's frustratingly good. The key one for me last season was Josh Jacobs. He just turns into this beast of a player every time we seem to play him. But him being out of Las Vegas is a huge win for us there. Zach, talk to us about sort of the Raiders and Chargers games, will you?
Yeah. Man, I really hope they can get that Raiders win. I think that is huge. I agree with you guys entirely. I think it's a bit of an embarrassing streak because the Raiders have just been so inept. I don't know why the Broncos can't get over the hump. The quarterback thing is definitely a big reason why. And I think this Raiders team's going to be pretty bad. I think last year's end of season run was great, and they kind of, because of financial reasons, because of Max Crosby threatening to request a trade and whatnot, they kind of had to hire Antonio Pierce. But the history of interim coaches that get the full-time gig is so fraught. Over the last 2 decades, I don't think a single one has wound up with a career winning record with the team that ends up making him the full-time head coach. And it's a really weird team. I don't think the Raiders know what they want to do. They have so many pieces like a Devontae Adams, like a Max Crosby that inform a win now strategy. And yet their ownership group doesn't have the money to pay for a coaching staff, to pay for a front office. So they're stuck with this group, and they're stuck with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. This is a team that you would think after Derek Carr, after Jimmy Garoppolo went totally disastrous last year, that they would go, hey, the last thing we want to do, mid-level vet quarterback in free agency. And then they go out and they do precisely that with Gardner Minshew, who, I mean, honestly, if you watch the Colts last year, he was not good. They're paying him $20 million. He was not good for the Colts last year. It was just gamed up for him. And Luke Getsy is not Shane Steichen. So I just... anyways, I think the Raiders are going to be bad this year. I actually have a little sneak ahead or sneak preview, excuse me, to the next Raiders game here on the schedule. I've got the Broncos sweeping the Raiders this time.
I mean, it's to see, isn't it? The Broncos sweeping the Raiders. I've got a few Raiders fans, friends over here. There seem to be everywhere Raiders fans in the UK. But we're hoping to get one over on them. The Chargers, they don't worry me too much. They're always going to charge you in my eyes. Injuries, and I know Justin Herbert is dealing with a foot injury, isn't it? I think it can be quite painful to play through. So I'm hopeful that will sort of have an impact throughout the season, and he'll miss a few games here and there. He's a hell of a good quarterback, but the rest of the weapons there sort of don't worry me. I'm glad we actually stole their tight end Donald Parham. He seems to me like he might actually be a weapon for us this season. He's 6'8". Red zone is where we sort of have failed miserably over the last few years. So I'm glad we've signed him. I know he's on the practice squad for now, but I think he'll be a game day call up. So we've gone through 6 games of the season. I think we're all on the same record. No, I've gone 5 and 5. I can't do my maths. 5-1 through the first 6, and then you guys are at 4-2. So again, be an optimistic version of us over here. Saints and Panthers. Saints game is interesting, obviously. Sean Payton going back to his old team. How do you see that one playing out, Zach?
I buy into the Sean Payton revenge factor. And then I also think there's something to be said about, every time we see Kyle Shanahan match up with Dan Quinn or Matt LaFleur match up with Dan Quinn in the playoffs, and they're able to really scheme up some looks specifically to take advantage of that. They bludgeon them. They bully them. It is mean. It is a little hard to watch even. I don't think that highly of Dennis Allen right now. I think it's frankly a little miraculous he wasn't fired at the end of last season when the team openly revolted against his play calling. That seems like a tremendous red flag and probably a fire. Well, anyways, neither here nor there. I think he's a dead man walking. This is, he's not a great head coach. I think Sean Payton knows how to pick apart that defense. The roster's really funky. They might be playing Spencer Rattler by this point. I'm a big Saints non-believer. You have a quarterback that is maybe most skittish of pressure in the league, and you probably have the worst offensive line in the league. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all predicted a win there. We trust in Sean Payton. I think he'll get one over on his old team. Kieran, we've got that tough middle section of the season at Ravens, at Chiefs, and on the Falcons at home. I predicted a win against the Falcons. They're strong this year. I don't really know why I picked a Broncos win. I just wanted us to break that sort of losing streak and gone with my heart a little bit. But talk to us about that middle section of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out a bit more once this Ravens Chiefs game's out the way, I suppose, Mark. But I think on paper, that's one where you're probably looking at two contenders, really, aren't you? Thereabouts. So they're both going to be tricky. I think we know the Ravens will be there or thereabouts, and as I mentioned before, the Chiefs. Most betting companies have them on for the 3-peat already. They're probably top odds. Do they look better? Probably ever so slightly stronger, the Chiefs, just on that, offensive side with a few more weapons back there for Patrick Mahomes this year and things. So I think we're really going to struggle to get anything from either of those two. Bit like you with the Falcons, it was one where I was toying with it. Yeah, on paper they are stronger, but I couldn't look at them 4 games because I've got us losing to the Raiders in Vegas. So I was looking at them forced in. It needs to break somewhere, and that was the one I picked. But yeah, it's a really tough, like you say. Was it week 8? Is that week 9? That's a really tough run heading into that bye week. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a strong start to the season to sort of put bed to that middle section. Zach, the Falcons game sheet, we've got obviously Justin Simmons is there now. That secondary is pretty strong and pretty loaded. How do you think Bo will face face throwing against those?
I think he'll do pretty well, actually. I do have them losing to the Falcons. To me, it's a few things. I think you're coming off some really hard games against the Ravens and Chiefs, like you guys just highlighted. I'll also point out at this point in the season, for that Falcons game, the Broncos will have played 10 games without a bye week. Their bye week is crazy late in the season, I believe week 14. And I do think, knock on wood, no one on the injury report right now. Great start. I think Sean Payton's done a great job of managing the injury aspect. Nonetheless, they're going to play 14 weeks of football without a bye, or 13 rather, 13 weeks of football without a bye. That's insanely brutal. I think that's going to show some. And then again, my questions with the Broncos are more defensive than offensive. I think the offense will be able to pick on this Falcons defense. I think they're fairly talent poor, and I think losing a DC as strong as Ryan Nielsen is only going to make that show up more this season. Although I do like the investments they've made into the secondary and up front, even with Matthew Judon. But I just think I think Kirk Cousins in that offense, Bijan, I think is a really great offensive player of the year candidate. He just looks amazing. Drake London might be the most slept on receiver in the league. Like he and Garrett Wilson are in the same category of oh my God, get those guys a quarterback and they are going to go bananas. So I just, to me, the offense for the Falcons is scary. And then you even have Kyle Pitts as an X factor. I'm not going to bank on him doing anything anymore, but there's a chance, he finally, now that he has a quarterback, he starts lighting it up.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Wilson, he's a wide receiver we'd all love to have. I try and get him in the fantasy team most seasons. Now he's got, he just needs that quarterback, doesn't he? So we're moving on to the Browns, Colts, Chargers stretch towards the end of the season. I know, I think it's after the Browns, is it, that we have our bye week? It was after the Colts, one of them. That is a long stretch, like you said, to be playing football week in, week out. The players will probably be absolutely knackered at this point. They'll deserve their bye week. At what record do you think we'll need to be in before we head into that tough stretch at Bengals, Chiefs to end the season? What if we're going to have any chance of the playoffs? If that is our aim this season, who knows sort of what Sean Payton's actual realistic aims are? What kind of record are we going to sort of need to be at? Do you think there, Zach?
And I'm sorry, at which point after the bye?
Yeah, heading in after the bye.
Man, that's tough. So after that bye, they got the Browns in the bye week. I think Colts is a really tough game. Honestly, the Browns is a tough game as well. But then after that bye, you got Colts at Chargers. I think it's going to be tough. You'll have Harbaugh on them rolling more by that point. At Bengals is going to be tough. I love them as a sneaky pick to win the whole AFC. Chiefs, I think the Broncos might luck out because the Chiefs might not be playing for anything. So you might be going against Carson Wentz and co. For that Week 18 game. I don't know. I'd say to feel good about your playoff chances leaving the bye, I'd want to be no worse than 9-4. Because just looking at that stretch, I think 2-2 is awesome. Like if you get out of that at 2-2, I think you should feel great. And then that gets you 11-6. That'll guarantee you a playoff spot. 10-7 probably doesn't guarantee you a playoff spot with how deep the AFC is at the top. A good chance you'll get in. But yeah, I don't think you want to be like in a position where you have to go 500 down on that stretch to make yourself or to fight your way into the playoff. So I would say at least 9-4.
Well, I mean, if you're following my picks here, that's exactly where we're going to be before heading in. So we better hope we're following my picks there. Yeah. You guys are a bit more realistic, I think. And who knows what the Broncos' actual aims are? Are we rebuild? Are we not? We've sort of embraced it a little bit more this season. But they seem content on winning most games, and they've got a confidence about them that seems to be spreading around the rest of the squad. Chiefs game at home, you touched on it. I'm hoping we continue our sort of home winning streak. I was there at the last one to help break the streak. My only game in Mile High against the Chiefs, so I'm delighted to have won that one. Kieron, talk to us sort of about the end of season running there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a very difficult one. Again, I've got us down losing to the Chargers, losing to the Bengals. Two road games where, yeah, you are looking at the Bengals as being one of the top contenders. And again, I just think the Chargers, they're not going to be great this year, but I think they're going to be two ugly games. I think is kind of how it's going to be. And again, it was a flip of the coin one, but it's not going to be an easy win. And then the Chiefs, I think we've all took them as a sweep. And I think it's just, as Zach said, it falls nicely in the schedule where at that point there's a good chance that they've wrapped up the division, they're comfortable into the playoffs, wherever they want to be. And there's a few key players rested. So I think that one lands nicely more than I think that we'll outplay them. One first v first, but it is, like you say, it's a late bye and coming at that hard end stretch. We want to be in a good position, depending on what, like you say, is our goal for the season. And that message at your mum, Mark, we've discussed it before, is that the team and the camp and everybody seems to be, we are still in it to win it. And we know it's not necessarily a rebuild, but it very much looks like a rebuild. And what message would you want to put out there other than we're here to win and play and win games? So I think it's going to be an interesting year because I think there's a lot of pieces on both sides of our, on the offense and the defense where we can compete, but I don't think there's any expectations that we are pushing on for playoff football, in my opinion. If we get there, brilliant. But as we've said before, we'd take the building blocks, that sign of progression, and just that sort of positive look to the future for a change, I think. But
yeah, I think it'll be a miraculous sort of achievement if we do get to the playoffs. I mean, we've got one of the highest dead cap hits against us, and so to do that on a roster with that sort of hit against us it'll be an amazing feat. We'll just round up quickly our overall record. I've gone for an 11-6 season. Optimistically, I think that gets us into the playoffs. Kieran, you've gone for, I believe, a
10-7, but I think for me, Mark, it could easily be 8-9. It's one of those. We'll be in that middle. Be in that middle.
I do think there'll be a lot of close one-score games. We've had a few over the season, last few seasons, and they could go either way. I've just sort of ruled with my heart instead of my head. Zach, you've gone for a 9-8 season. Talk us just through finally your sort of realistic aims for the season there.
Yeah, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I think they land somewhere in that middle, like 7-10 to 10-7 bunch. I will say though, I think people are sleeping on Sean Payton pretty hard here. I listen to a lot of NFL or national NFL analysts, and hearing them do their preseason predictions and whatnot, I hear a lot of people scared to bet against the Steelers in spite of how messy that quarterback situation looks, because they go, well, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season, and he just some way always finds a way to get that winning season. Sean Payton doesn't quite have that streak, but he's been around 4 years longer than Mike Tomlin, and he has never lost more than 9 games in a season. Even last year, when he had a defense dropping 70, he had a quarterback that, to my point earlier in the show, couldn't do so many basic elements of like passing offense with so many the whole coaching overhaul they had to do, which really hurt the team early on in the season. The reformatting of the depth chart that they did midseason that led to a defensive turnaround that one would imagine won't have to do this time around. Facing all that, they got to 8-9. I think they get back. So I have them going 9-8 here. I think they'll probably be a little less lucky than last year's team and a little better than last year's team, and kind of land in that same spot. I just, man, I don't know. I would hammer that 5.5 number. Personally, I already have. I don't imagine. I can't imagine where this team only wins 5 games. Yeah. I think they are a deeply flawed roster. I think Sean Payton will will them to at least 6. And you look at the value of coaching to this point really quick. Andy Reid and the Chiefs, they have had high expectations year in, year out. So their over-under mark to clear is pretty difficult to clear. Andy Reid's like 9 of 11 years right now in terms of hitting the over for Kansas City. That coaching impact, or just like organizational uplift, is so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, that you mentioned it there, that over is just so incredible. Sean Payton has never been that low. So I've covered it as well. I know, Kieran, you're thinking about it as well. If not, you already have. We'll move on now onto our week 1 sort of preview. We'll quickly go through the Seahawks game. Kieran, you've sent me your keys to the game. You picked out 3 sort of key areas that you want to talk about. So we'll talk about them now.
Yeah. So 3, and I don't know how they're different from yours, Mark. But you just see them on the screen there. Zach, it'd be interesting to get your views. But I think for me, there's questions. We have improved. They brought some big players in on the D line, like you've said. But that secondary, we've locked down Pat Surtain to a long-term deal, which is brilliant. But still going into this game, I know we've had a clear injury report. Brandon Jones is back. But Zach, how much do you think that we'll see him feature, considering he's missed that much of camp? And then will that affect, who steps in? Is it Devin Key? How do we cope with, Geno Smith, apparently from all accounts, has been playing well pre-season and in camp, and he's sort of nailing that offensive playbook for Seahawks. So I can imagine that we are going to be tested in that secondary with, some shots to DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Tyler Lockett. So I think this is a key battle for me. But I just wondered if you had any insights to the Brandon Jones situation and how you think we'll fare in that backfield.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fully with you. Even if Brandon Jones is back, and to your point about the injury report, it looks like he is. He's a guy who does his best work around the line of scrimmage. Same thing with PJ Locke. Brandon Jones' worst year was last year in that more Fangio defense in Miami, where they asked him to be sitting back and playing deeper. And that's just not his best skill set or even close to it. So either way, and I think that the same kind of goes for Devon Key. Either way, this team is going to be vulnerable to Seattle's receivers. The talent point is a great one as well, just because there is a talent disparity there. But then lastly, what Ryan Grubb wants to do. It's why I highlighted the pass rushers for the Broncos. He's a very vertical, aggressive offensive play caller. Very creative with how he draws that stuff up too. Now, on one hand, that's going to mean Geno Smith holding onto the ball for longer. That's going to open up opportunities for the pass rush. On the other side, it's going to mean that if a Riley Moss has a bad play, if a Devon Key has a bad rep, if a Brandon Jones has a blown coverage, which again, these are weak points or at least question marks of these guys' games. Absolutely, it could be a game breaker for the Broncos, especially with how much trouble I think the Seahawks defense should give them. So I love that. I think that is definitely a key element of the game.
Yeah. And then my next one, Mark, is exactly both of you. You touched on it earlier, Zach, when we went through the predictions. Is we want to see this diverse, I suppose, for a change, running back room. We've got two. You've got Javonte Williams back to full health, we hope. We've got Estimate there, who is a bit of a wrecking ball. We've talked about it last week, that you might not have heard it, but I was a little bit shocked that Tyler Beatty got cut in place of Blake Watson. But now, obviously, I think your colleague Joey put a nice tweet up that just give us a little bit of that background information and a little bit more insight to maybe why Watson's kept on the roster for his pass catching ability. He used to be wide receiver and such. These little bits that are great for us across the pond. We're not there. We don't see as much. We don't do as much. I'm quite liking the fact that we've got this running back room now. And like you said, I think that's the key to, or one of the keys to winning this game. If we've got that chance, Seahawks struggled against the run last year. But again, new head coach in, who was previously a defensive coordinator, that's the type of stuff straight away he's going to be looking at and trying to nail down and tighten up. They have acquired a couple of bits on that front. But again, what's your views on that? Do you see that? I know he's touched on it already, but is this a key point for you? And who do you see maybe as being the key players for us out that backfield?
Yeah, I think it's a Javonte Williams day for sure. And then I think up front, like what can Luke Wattenberg do? Can he make sure this run game doesn't get sunk? I think it is going to be a very important aspect. Every drop back for Bo Nix against this Seattle defense is going to be like taking a calculus exam. It is going to be mentally taxing. It's going to be complicated. There aren't going to be easy answers. I don't think you want to put 30 of those or 40 of those on him in his first taste of like real NFL action. I think you're going to want to be a little more metered in that. I think the Broncos are going to look to shorten the game as well. All of those things tie back to the run game. And like you said, it aligns with the Seahawks weaknesses. They were 30th in rush EPA allowed last year. And I agree, Mike McDonald probably is going to shore that up some, as does the addition of Byron Murphy. Nonetheless, this group really hasn't lived up to their pedigree for a while now. Like I said earlier in the show, I don't think that Mike McDonald presence is going to be all there week one. It's going to take them some time to pick up that system, much like we saw in Denver with the new staff last year. Run game is definitely key.
Yeah. And you've touched on my last point there, Zach, as well, which is we've seen massive improvement in the Denver O-line and tied down Quinn Miners to that big contract. And, we talked about it before on the podcast, Mark, we're now sort of looking at that O-line's where the investment, if we're giving Bo every chance as a quarterback, Zach, to come in and try and succeed. He's got some weapons around him, but that protection is what he needs to sort of settle into the NFL. The question mark for us, I think, coming into this, is you've touched on it just there, is Luke Wattenberg and his role in that as centre, and how can he live up to the expectations that we've got for this O-line now and the job that we need him to deliver. And do you see him as the weak spot in that line, or have you seen enough, maybe he's in camp in pre-season and such, where we're confident that there's a job to a level at least?
Yeah, I think it's I think he has the weak point. It's is it going to sink the ship? Is it something where you can work around it? Because I think Lloyd Cushenberry was good in a lot of aspects last year, but he also had some real gaps in his game. I thought he was the oh, I take that back. There was some other funky things going on. But I don't think he was like an especially strong point on the Broncos offensive line last year. I would say that. So I don't think you're going from like, he just became one of like the highest paid centers ever, if not the highest paid center ever. I don't think you're going from like an elite center to a questionable center. I think you're going from like a fine center to a questionable center. And then where does that questionable thing land ultimately? Is it is the answer to the question, oh my God, this guy cannot play, and the Broncos need to like promote Sam Mustipher. They need to look at Alex Forsyth. It is because like the center position, it's the easiest to cover up on the offensive line, but also it could absolutely sink your quarterback if it's bad enough. So I think it's going to come down to how problematic is it. If Luke Wattenberg is an average starter, I think that's kind of like best case scenario. I think it's possible. But I want to know how much of a problem is it going to be? Is it like, oh, that's not great, but you got 4 other good pieces there, you can work around it? Or is it a thing that just absolutely changes the season? I think both are possible.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to sort of the 3 keys that I picked out. The offense running on schedule. We didn't have that at all really last season with Russ. We touched on it before. Bo Nix having to keep up with the plays, with the chains, keep them moving. It's going to be key. We don't want him taking, like you said, 30 dropbacks and playing us. Use the run game, use the RPO. I think that's going to be crucial there. Our run defense was a massive, massive issue last season. We've took major steps to sort of firm that up. We've got John Franklin Myers. Malcolm Roach is one of the signings of preseason for me. His influence in that locker room is massive as well. How do you see the Denver run defense going in that one, Zach?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a huge point. I love all your keys here, but making sure Nix isn't in those 3rd and long situations where McDonald can really dial it up for him, I think is huge. Defending the run also big. Like I've highlighted, I think the Broncos' path to like defensive success in this game is going to be the pass rush coming home. It's an old football adage for a reason that the run game can really neuter the pass rush. If you're getting gashed by Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, this is a Seattle group with a handful of talented running backs. If you're getting gashed by those guys, you aren't going to be able, one, to let your pass rush tee off as much as you want, and 2, you're probably going to be forced to give the Seahawks more single high looks. And again, as I talked about with Grubb, that's what they want. They want to stretch you downfield vertically. And if you're only going to put 1 safety down there, you're making it that much easier for them.
Yeah, it's spot on there. I mean, I'm going to move on to the red zone efficiency. Broncos have been awful, really, when we got down to the red zone. We managed to get there a fair few times. We just couldn't force that ball into the end zone. When we get there, we need to take our chances. I'm hopeful that we'll see a lot of Estime in the red zone. I think he can bundle through defenders, get to the end zone. We've got some very big wide receivers. Devon Vele has been the star of camp, and Cortland Sutton, what he can do down there. If we elevate Donald Parham, you've got Dulcich, you've got some weapons there that Bo Nix should be able to utilize and to score those points. Kieran,
it wouldn't be me if I didn't mute myself. Sorry about that, y'all. Bo Nix, sorry, let me. I fully agree. The red zone efficiency has to come back. Last year, the margins were like the disappointing season and everything. Like I said, they still made it to 8-9, and even at 8-9, the margins were so slim that, hey, maybe if they're not a horrific red zone team, I know for a fact they don't lose that 1-point game to the Raiders. They probably don't lose that 2-point game to Washington. Those just immediately come to mind. I could look at the rest of the schedule. Man, if you get some of those points back, some of those field goals become touchdowns. Maybe this is a 9-8, 10-7 team. We're not talking about a Raiders streak. We're not talking about a losing record streak. Maybe we're not talking about a playoff drought. It is absolutely massive that gets rectified. The big receivers are a big part of it. So is Bo Nix. Talking about Russell Wilson last year. One, Sean Payton really likes to throw the ball in the red area, and I already have highlighted how so much of the field wasn't accessible to Russell Wilson. Well, in the red zone, you only have less field to work with. So you're already blocking off a huge hunk of that field. And where does Russell Wilson really struggle? The short to intermediate area, quick game concepts, the stuff that probably wants to be your bread and butter in the red zone. You're just seldom running like post routes or like deep 7-step dropbacks in the red zone, which is, again, where Russell Wilson wants to thrive. Teams really just had to defend the dump offs to the running back, and Cortland Sutton doing absolutely bonkers things in the back of the end zone, and they were fine. Nix also just has the legs. That'll be more of a presence. I'm optimistic it will be improved, and the value of it getting improved is massive.
Yeah, I mean, well, we'll end this segment here with do you think we're going to, I mean, we touched on it before, do we see the Broncos winning this week, Kieran?
I'm still gonna err on the side of yes, Mark. But as we mentioned earlier, for me, it's a tough opener. It's a flip of a coin, and it's maybe his heart ruling head on it ever so slightly. But I think it'll be close. I think we'll be in it. We'll be competing, but it's a tough environment for both to go as first start. But yeah, 1-0.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the Seahawks are just gonna, they're a little more established right now, even with the new coaching staff, just talent-wise. I think, like I said right off the top of the show, I don't know if you could draw up a tougher setting for your rookie quarterback to enter for their first game. I think, it's fairly close. I'm thinking like 23-16 is the score I'm throwing out there with the Seahawks winning. But, I think the Broncos certainly have a chance in this one.
Yeah, I mean, that leads us right onto our next section. Every week, myself and Kieran are going to pit ourselves against the Denver media. Zach is up first, representing that team. You've got a lot of pressure on your shoulders here. Kieran is pretty good at picking you. So we're going for week one predictions, which we'll share with you now. On the screen. Obviously, we've done our own game. We've both gone wins, Kieran, and Zach, you've gone for a Seahawks win. But let's talk through a few of these. We all obviously think the Chiefs are going to beat the Ravens. At the time of recording, we're on Thursday. They play in a mere few hours. Just talk us quickly around that one, Kieran.
Yeah, for me, I mentioned earlier, Mark, I think this is probably one of the better games in the of the season. It's a great opener, and obviously why it's being picked for Thursday night to kick the season off. I think it'll be tight. I think it'll probably be a bit of an offensive show out, but yeah, Chiefs sneakers for me.
Yeah, it's a massive battle. They could both sort of be challenging up there at the top, and they should really be battling for the AFC there. Packers and Eagles. Obviously, we've gone different, Kieran, here. I've gone for a Packers win. Packers just Jordan Love with that massive new contract. I just see them getting the job done. He's a good quarterback. He didn't show it against us in training camp. But Zach, you've also gone with me on Packers there.
Yeah, I'm a Jordan Love believer as well. And for me, a lot of it just came down to the Eagles. I don't know what the Eagles are going to be like this year. I know the talent's really good. I wouldn't be surprised if Kieran's right on this. But it just, they have a lot of like disaster potential to me, I feel. That the Packers just don't. And that's why I went Packers. The vibes too, just the whole Sirianni thing's kind of weird. And then you're going to Brazil to play this game, and it's the first Brazil game. And you have all the Eagles players talking about the long symposium they got about, don't do this, don't do that. Don't walk around the street with your phone in your hands and whatnot. I don't know. Packers.
Yeah, an international game, it could be a coin toss. I mean, they are always really good games when they come over and play in London every year. But flip a coin. Steelers, Falcons. We've all gone the same. We've all gone the Falcons there. Cardinals and Bills. Bills just look like they're a strong team every year, aren't they? So pretty easy selection there for me. Kieran, talk us through that one.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that much of us. You're right. The Bills always look good. What weapons has he got? Josh Allen got this year. Maybe there's a little bit of a question mark around that. Obviously, they did bring in Coleman and the likes, but I don't think you can write off Kyler Murray. For me, I think that the Cardinals, hopefully they might look a little bit more improved, but I think it's a bit tighter than a Bills shutout. But they do pinch it for me.
Yeah, We've all gone Chicago Bears. We've all gone Caleb Williams there in his NFL debut. Zach, your thoughts on Caleb there? Maybe going for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Is he going to beat out Bo Nix?
Yeah, I mean, I love Bo Nix, but man, Caleb looks phenomenally special. I think there are some things in his game I am worried about, and I want to see get proven. But yeah, I mean, I'll take that equation any day of the week. Give me this quarterback that needs to figure out X, Y, Z, but can do make magic on a regular basis, and that's what Caleb Williams is. I like the Titans a fair bit this year, but yeah, I just think the Bears are a tier above.
Yeah, Patriots, Bengals, another easy pick for myself there. Bengals should easily win this one. Patriots might possibly be one of the worst teams in the league this season. Texans, Colts. We've all gone with Houston Texans. We believe in them. Colts will be a tough game, of course. The Colts always play well, but I think we've all gone there for a reason. Jaguars, Dolphins. I'm the only one different. I believe in Trevor Lawrence. Dolphins are obviously a very stacked roster. They're very good offensively. They put the beat down on us last season. Zach, talk to us why you chose the Dolphins though.
Yeah, I think Mike McDaniel these last 2 years has, and I don't know how far the Dolphins will go. I'll probably be picking against them in December, but these last 2 years has just come out of the gates looking like a bat out of hell, and I think he's going to do it again. I also am really fading the Jags, and until Doug Peterson starts calling plays for them again, I'm fading him. I think him making Press Taylor call plays is a huge part of the reason he got fired in Philly. I think it's a huge part of the reason the Jags missed the playoffs last year, and he seems just entirely unwilling to take back play calling duties. So I'm selling the Jags.
Yeah, we've got Saints and Panthers. We've all gone with the Saints at home. Vikings, Giants. That could be one of the easiest wins of the week. Giants don't look great. I mean, what have they got going for them, Kieran?
Well, they've got a great quarterback, Mark, haven't they? We just discussed this because the list you've just seen, Bo Nix is ranked 32 of 32, Zach, from the is in level of starting quarterback across the NFL. But yeah, not a lot right now. And again, the Giants have looked that way for a little while. I don't know if they thought Daniel Jones was the start of that or going to be that savior a few years back, but that hasn't surmounted. But they just don't seem to be making any sort of improvement across the board, to be honest. It's just, yeah, it's an easy one for me. I think they're probably going to be one of the worst teams again this year.
We've got the all AFC West matchup, Raiders at Chargers. We've all gone with the Chargers. Yeah, it's a tough one to pick, I think, though. Chargers, you never know what you're going to get, and Raiders, I think I've just gone against them because I just really want them to lose most of the games. Zach, why have you gone with Chargers there?
Yeah, man, I do not believe in the Raiders. Everything I just said about them, I thought Aiden O'Connell was a better quarterback than Minshew last year, and then all the reports out of camp were just, man, Aiden O'Connell is struggling so mightily in this Getsy offense that almost by default it's going to Minshew. I mean, in the last preseason game, they were still playing the two quarterbacks to see who would win the starting job. And Antonio Pierce said to the media that that game would determine who the starter was. And then both played horribly. And he had to sheepishly go to the press conference after the game and be like, yeah, so Gardner Minshew won the starting job tonight after he threw 2 interceptions or whatever it was. They're a tire fire. That's really all it came down to for me.
Yeah. We'll touch on the one the one remaining game we've gone different on. I've gone different from you both. Rams at Lions. I've gone with the Rams. I just like their offensive options. Puka Nacua. I think he's one to watch. Lions.
I never bet against Dan Campbell and the Lions, so that streak needs to continue.
You do pick them every single week, and I pick against them. But you definitely won that battle last year. The Lions are, they're looking very good. They got
little man crush going on still. So yeah.
I can't blame you. I mean, I think they might, if they won the most regular season games out of anyone this year, I wouldn't be that surprised. I think the biggest obstacle to doing that is probably playing in a hard division. I think the Lions are great. Dan Campbell, you said it. That's why I went there. I just the Rams losing Aaron Donald, I think, is going to be really, really big. They were a great team last year. Really surprised everyone last year, especially defensively. I think those warts might show a little more now that you're removing, in my opinion, the greatest defensive player of all time from the equation.
Yeah, he's good. He's a huge loss in the middle there, isn't he? He's one hell of a player. Obviously, we'll see how we all get on in this week's edition of the Pick'ems. Let's just go with that, and hopefully that we will come out on top and show them what sort of Broncos Europe has on offer on the Denver media. Just before we let Zach go, we want to sort of let him plug where you can find him online. Obviously, he's co-founder of Let's Talk Broncos and one of our favourite shows. I know Kieran and I listen every show. But just tell us where our followers, and I'm sure they already do, but tell us where they can find you online, Zach.
Of course, at Zach_Segars. If you're watching it, it's on the screen under my face. If you're listening, at Zach with a CH_SEGARS. Thank you guys so much for having me. You can find me more over at letstalkbroncos.com and Let's Talk Broncos on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We have shows, on our YouTube dang near every day. We got 3 podcasts a week. But then supplementing that on YouTube, we've got an X's and O's series where we're going to be breaking down a big old batch of film from the preceding Broncos game, from the opponent's preceding game or previous game, and then break it all down. Do a really in-depth X's and O's breakdown of this upcoming Broncos Seattle matchup. That'll be airing Friday night, so I believe tonight as people are listening to this. Just lots of good stuff. I'm very proud of the content we're putting out. I think we got a stellar team. And then if you want to find our writing, letstalkbroncos.com. I really think, I understand we're smaller than the other media outlets out there. Gosh darn, I think we're the best ones. So check us out. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'll second that, Zach. Sorry, Mark, jumping in. It is one of my go-tos, Zach, and I must admit it's probably some of the best and fun content. I think that's the bit you get as well, is when you listen to you guys talk. It's honest, but there's banter, there's a bit of chat, and it makes it easy to listen to as well as the expertise and the knowledge and stuff that comes through. So yeah, definitely worth checking it out.
Thank you so much. I'm very flattered by that, and I can tell you guys got that down too after joining you here for this one show. It was an absolute treat.
I mean, when Kieran and I sat down previously to discuss who we wanted to get on the show, we went straight to Let's Talk Broncos, one of our favourites. It's somewhere where we sort of aspire to be one day, hopefully build that community like yourselves, and never know, we'll get there one day. But just a massive thank you for joining the show, Zach, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon. If you are out there and you aren't following us on social media, we are on Twitter at Broncos EUR. We have our Facebook group, which has our game day threads. That's where our main community is. We've got the Discord channel. You can find all our links on our Twitter. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.